Good morning. My name is Amanda Rivera. I'm sorry. We're going to pause for 1 second.
I forgot to.
Thought we were ready. Oh, thank you.
Sorry, I forgot
Okay,
to silence
thank you.
my phone.
That's okay. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning again. My name is Amanda Rivera. I'm the hearing examiner presiding over today's case. The date is November 9th, 2023, and this is case DCI 2020-00005. It is a rezoning request from Ag 2 to the IPD zoning district. Because it is a quasi-judicial hearing, all evidence and testimony must be taken under oath. So if you intend to speak today, if you could please raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will provide is the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. We can begin with the applicant whenever you're ready.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Amanda. My name is Terry Kramer. I am an attorney for the applicant, and I just want to do a quick overview of why we're here today and introduce you to our team. To my left is Brian Smith, who's the project manager. Next to him is Cindy Bozuela, who's the project planner. And then behind her is Yori Baikal, who's the traffic expert. And then a representative of the applicant, Clay Frankel. But short story, we're here to rezone from AG2, like you mentioned, to an IPD, to plan on doing a storage facility. It's about 6.8, 6.9 acres, and we plan on doing a storage facility around 90,000 square feet. I'm going to have Cindy kind of walk through to put our presentation on the record, and then we're all here to answer any questions we may have. And just so you're aware, we do have two individuals from the public that are the adjacent property to the north, and we've spoke to them about it, but they have some questions as well, just so you're aware. Thank you.
Thank you. And you did provide a copy of the PowerPoint, so I'll accept that as applicant's Exhibit 1. And applicant Exhibit A was the 48-hour letter that was already received by my office. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Brizuela, for the record. I have been previously accepted as an expert on the Lee County Land Development Code, Lee Plan, zoning, site planning, and land use planning as they relate to Lee County zoning and planning. I'm asking to be accepted as an expert on these topics once again for the subject case.
Yes, thank you.
An updated resume was provided in advance of the hearing as part of the applicant's 48-hour letter, and a hard copy is available should it be needed.
Okay, thank you. And is that updated from what we have on last August? Okay, so that was accepted again in the 48-hour letter.
Not working?
It's working earlier.
Yeah. Trying it.
Okay. So the subject property is approximately 6.86 acres. It is located east of Country Lakes Drive, significantly east of I-75, north of Luckett Road. Its current zoning is Ag 2, and the current future land use is urban community. As Mr. Kramer mentioned, the request is to rezone to industrial plan development. To the north of the subject property is a single-family residence on Ag 2 zoning. To the east and south of the subject property is the Cypress Woods Mobile Home RV Park. West of the subject property is the Country Lakes Drive right-of-way. Adjacent to the southwest portion of the site is industrial flex space. Similarly, across Country Lakes Drive on both sides of Kelly Tractor Drive is light industrial space, which has an underlying industrial interchange, future land use. The subject property is serviced by Lee County Utilities for potable water and wastewater. Potable water is treated at the North Lee County and Olga water treatment plants. Wastewater is treated at the Central Wastewater Treatment Plant. The master concept plan has been further annotated to clarify where buffers and uses are located. The principal uses are highlighted in purple. Accessory uses are highlighted in red and consist of a modest office building and a service area. The buffers are highlighted in green. The northern buffer, as you can see here, is proposed to be 25-foot wide type E with a wall. The eastern and southern buffers are proposed to be 30-foot type F buffers, which are further enhanced through the preservation of adjacent native vegetation. The eastern buffer would be a 40.5-foot wide buffer that includes native vegetation, and similarly, the enhanced southern buffer would be 50 feet in width. As described in the 48-hour letter, the master concept plan, which was reviewed by staff and included in the staff report, has a commercial standard of 30% open space, whereas an industrial standard of 20% open space is being proposed. This is the only change being proposed to the master concept plan and is not reducing the provided indigenous open space. Instead, the provided open space is increasing from 1.02 acres to 1.11 acres. Additionally, environmental condition D4 is requested to be modified to exclude language pertaining to the architectural features that staff would not like to see.
Okay, hold on one second, I'm sorry. So the 48-hour letter identified the change in the open space table. That was the only change to the master concept plan?
Yes.
Do you happen to have an 11 by 17 of the master concept plan that's revised?
I have a very I'm Brian Smith for the record. I have a very marked up one.
Okay. No, I might leave the record open just to receive that if possible, because it was just hard for me to read on this
I can
version.
print you an
You
11
can?
by
Okay.
17, yes.
Staff might be able to provide that today, so we can get that. And then on the open space, to clarify again, there's not a deviation that's required because the reduction was due to the change to an IPD instead of a CPD?
Correct.
Okay, so you are complying with IPD open space
Yes.
regulations? Okay, thank you. And then what were you just saying about?
Condition D4 is requested to be modified to exclude the language pertaining to the architectural features that staff would not like to see.
Why is that so?
We believe that architectural features would enhance the building and would provide some benefit to surrounding neighbors.
I have a lot
And
of
especially if there's,
buffer, so if you want to, do you want to do that now, or do you want to complete the
We can-
presentation and then come back?
we can come back to this.
Okay, yes, so if there's a change, it sounds like that might be news to the staff, so if we can just put a bookmark right now on the buffers, and then we'll come back to that at the end.
Okay. There are two deviations being proposed. Both have been reviewed by staff and are recommended for approval. The first deviation is from LDC section 10-416D4, which requires a 25-foot wide type E buffer with a wall to allow an enhanced 40.5-foot wide buffer, which is inclusive of a 30-foot wide type F buffer, as well as an additional 10.5 feet of indigenous preserve. The southern buffer is also proposed to consist of a 30-foot wide type F buffer. This buffer would be enhanced by 20 feet of indigenous preserve. This deviation is being sought to enhance the buffering and screening of the site through native vegetation in lieu of a solid wall. The second deviation is from LDC section 10-416D4, where a type E buffer is required to allow the wall requirement to be met by the proposed building. This deviation is being sought since it would be unnecessary to provide a wall to buffer a low building with a wall between the uses and the proposed vegetative buffer. Are there any questions on the buffers?
Yes, if we could get into the buffers then, if you can go back. So the deviations was my first question, because it mentioned a few times in the staff report that there would be no deviations, but then it recognized the two deviations, and there's no analysis of 21.1.2. So policy 21.1.2 says if you're going to seek landscape or buffer deviations in the Caloosahatchee Shores, you have to go through the variance criteria analysis. And I didn't see that anywhere in here, and there was mention that that wasn't required because there weren't deviations being requested, but the two deviations do relate to landscape buffers, so I'm not any clarity on that.
Initially, the project began as a commercial plan development without the need for buffers, deviations specific to the buffering. And when the project changed to an industrial plan development, it triggered the necessity for those buffer deviations.
Okay, so that's where the confusion's coming in. So I will need that somewhere. It's not in the materials that I have.
Correct.
Okay.
Actually, the deviations came after the staff report was done. They emailed us that they need these two deviations. These two deviations, they are not really reducing the landscape buffer. I mean, they are changing the type. The main thing is that type E requires a wall. And in here they have a building, back of the building will act as a wall. And the width is staying the same, basically with all the buffer and the indigenous, and we are conditioned that the back of the wall should not have any doors or windows or air conditioning units, so that will act as a wall. It's not very, I mean, it doesn't serve any purpose to have one wall and then in front of it build another wall.
And we're talking about the eastern and the southern?
Correct. On the
The wall that
northern,
he's referring to is the northern buffer,
Okay.
and then where the type F is being provided is along the eastern and southern.
So deviation 1 is for the eastern and southern, deviation 2 is for the northern,
Yes.
but they all relate to the landscape buffer. Okay, and again, the intended use of the property did not change. So when staff reviewed it and you prepared the staff report, there were no deviations required because it was a CPD. At some point, you decided to make it an IPD, which prompted the need, but the actual use in the master concept plan with the landscape buffers did not change through the course of your review?
everything stays the same, it's just a change from CPD to IPD.
Okay. Okay, could you walk me through again then, just with the buffers, what's adjoining on each of these?
On the other surrounding
Yes,
land
please.
uses? Sure. So along the northern buffer is that single-family residence to the north. It's zoned Ag 2. And then along the eastern and southern, unfortunately, we have the screen there cutting it, but the southern portion of the property is abutting the Cypress Woods RV Park. So that's what's going on both the eastern and southern boundaries. And then along the western boundary, we have some industrial flex, a little preserved pocket there that's part of the industrial flex area. And then we abut Country Lakes Road.
Okay, so there will be a functional wall to some extent, either virtue of the buildings or a wall itself that's shielding the adjacent residences?
Correct.
On the 3 abutting boundary lines where there are residential uses?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Okay. I'm still gonna need that,
The policy 1.1.2
yes, the
criteria.
analysis, yes, but we can leave the record open for that potentially if we need to.
Okay.
But that was the extent of my questions on the buffers for now. We want to move to the next section. Thank you.
And with that, I would like to introduce Mr. Brian Smith, the project manager.
Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. My name is Brian Smith. I have been sworn in as an expert with landscape architecture matters as well as land planning. My resume is on record and I would request the same.
Yes, thank you.
I am the project manager for the site. Been working on this thing for quite a while. This thing started a long time ago with Terry and Clay that's in the office. Do you have a clicker? Let's see here. I want to briefly just go over the environmental conditions with the understanding within the staff report that the conditions are that before any kind of development order is obtained, they must go through another acoustic cavity and foraging survey for the potential endangered bonneted bat, as well as a gopher tortoise and burrowing owl kind of survey. That's standard for any kind of development order that goes forward with Lee County, being that this map that you see in front of you from the environmental portion, you can tell me to slow down if you need me to. From the environmental portion was done back in 2020, so it would need to be updated. But within that survey that you can see on the screen is there's no presence of any wetlands. It's 100% pine flatwoods. There is 0.72 acres of rare and unique indigenous area on the site, and that's the reason why, if you take a look at the master concept plan, and I can go back to it, is the reason why, and I don't know if the pointer works. That's the reason why we preserve the area along the east and the south, not only to protect the existing residential to the east and south, but also that's an area where the pine flatwoods and good vegetation occurs. And you can also see within the environmental report that was in the entire package that there is no presence of protected species, but again, that needs to be updated. Right now, there's no presence of a bald eagle. The closest eagle's nest is about 1/8 of a mile to the south of this site. There is no presence of eastern indigo snakes. The fox squirrels, bonneted bats, or anything that has been checked for fish and wildlife requirements. So that is for that, for the environmental portion of that property.
But additional environmental review will be done to update it prior to site development.
Typically, when you do a development order, it has to be within a certain amount of time frame. This one's outdated, so it will be redone.
Thank you.
And I will turn this over to Yuri.
Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, Yuri Baikal with TR Transportation Consultants. I've been sworn in and previously accepted as an expert in transportation planning, and will have to be accepted as one today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We prepared a traffic analysis for this rezoning application, which is seeking approximately 95,300 square feet of mini warehouse and storage uses. As part of our traffic analysis, we first prepared a trip generation analysis consistent with the IT trip generation manual, which is a required source for us to use to come up with traffic projections for projects. We then took the trips and added them to the surrounding roadway network and prepared our typical link level of service analysis on the surrounding roadways, which include Country Lakes Drive. And the results of our future link level service analysis indicated Country Lakes Drive, which is a collector roadway, will operate at acceptable level of service C, or in other words, with sufficient capacity, both with and without the project in the future build-out project traffic conditions. And staff reviewed our traffic study and agreed that the project will not have a detrimental impact to the surrounding roadway system. And again, we still have to go through a development order process with the county. At that time, we'll prepare another traffic analysis, which will be more detailed. And at that time, we'll look at the need for turn lanes and other site-related improvements on our driveways. So in my professional opinion, this project is consistent with the transportation element of the LEED plan and the Land Development Code. Do you have any questions?
The TIS, it assumed full square footage as a storage facility, which it looks like matches the schedule of uses because the other requested uses have all been eliminated. But it kept mentioning the TIS that it was important to note there was 1,200 square feet of associated office. Does that generate any additional traffic though, or was that still included in the analysis that you completed?
That's included in analysis that completed. The office is an ancillary use. Every storage facility that's been surveyed by IT, they usually some sort of office associated with there for security and stuff like that. So that the traffic that's generated by the office is already included in the overall square footage.
With minimal staffing, I would expect.
Right.
Correct, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was the extent of my question.
Thank you.
Cindy Lead Brizuela for the record. The project is consistent with a number of LEED plan policies that are highlighted in the next few slides. Consistent with policy 1.1.4, which describes the underlying urban community future land use, the project is proposing a light industrial use. Policy 7.1.15 requires industrial development to address a number of criteria such as air emissions, the project's impacts on environmental and natural resources, as well as the project's impacts to neighbors and surrounding land uses. The proposed project will not contribute to air emissions at a rate above average for the use. Additionally, the property does not feature any natural resources that would offer a benefit should it be preserved. And regarding the property's impacts to neighbors and surrounding land uses, the property is being sufficiently screened from any existing residential uses through the incorporation of enhanced vegetative buffering. And due to the property's configuration, it will also be sufficiently screened from Country Lakes Drive, further isolating the use from the surrounding streetscape. Other criteria to be addressed include impacts to water and employment characteristics. No impacts to water quality or needs are anticipated as a result of the project. A stormwater narrative has been provided for staff to review, and a detailed set of engineered plans will be provided at the time of development order to further address any potential impacts that may rise. In regards to the employment characteristics, it should be noted that the proposed site plan includes a modest office area and the development is not proposed to be a major employment center. No deviations are being requested that would impact the project's accessibility. The fire department should therefore have sufficient access to safely enter and exit the site. The proposed development is also not anticipated to generate noise or odor above the norm for the proposed use. The proposed project features setbacks, landscaping, and buffering as required by the Land Development Code and has these standards annotated on the master concept plan, ensuring that future development of the site is consistent with today's Land Development Code. The property has sufficient access on Country Lakes Drive, a major collector to service the site. Additionally, the subject property will be serviced by LCU as noted on the letter of utility availability. Policies 7.1.2, 7.1.3, and 7.1.6 are also being supported through the rezoning of this site via the plan development process. By having the property adjacent to a major collector and by providing sufficient buffering from surrounding uses. The request is consistent with Goal 9 of the LEED Plan. Objective 9.2 is being supported by proposing an industrial use on the property, which better aligns with the urban community future land use designation than the current agricultural zoning. And finally, the request protects the rural character of the Caloosahatchee Shores community by providing enhanced buffering and indigenous open space to shield the use from the view of the surrounding uses, consistent with Goal 21. The findings that must be made for the rezoning cases are described in LDC section 34-145D4A1. The request must comply with the LEED plan. It is consistent with policy 1.1.4, goal 7, goal 9, and goal 21. B, that the request meets this code and other applicable county regulations or qualifies for deviations. The two deviations being requested both enhance the achievement of the objectives of the plan development as well as preserve and promote the general intent of this code to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. C, that the request be compatible with existing and planned uses in the surrounding areas. The schedule of uses has been tailored to address the site's compatibility with adjacent uses, and enhanced buffers are proposed to further address the site's compatibility with existing uses. D, that the project will provide access sufficient to support the proposed development intensity. Documentation has been provided to address the access easement, allowing the subject property to connect to Country Lakes Drive. E, the expected impacts on transportation facilities will be addressed by existing county regulations and conditions of approval. No impacts to transportation facilities were identified in the companion traffic study. However, a more detailed traffic analysis will need to be provided at the time of development order. F, the request will not adversely affect environmentally critical or sensitive areas, natural resources. The companion environmental study supports the conclusion that the proposed project will not affect environmentally critical or sensitive areas and natural resources. And G, that the project will be served by urban services, which it will be for both potable water and sanitary sewer. The findings that must be made for plan development zoning cases are described in LDC section 34-145D4A2. The criteria requires that the proposed use or mix of uses be appropriate at the proposed location, which, as previously stated, the schedule of uses has been tailored to the site. B, the recommended conditions provide sufficient safeguards to the public interest and are reasonably related to the impacts on the public's interest expected from the proposed development. No impacts are anticipated to the public's interest as a result of the proposed development. And C, if the application includes deviations, that each deviation enhances the achievement of the objectives of the plan development, and that the deviations preserve and promote the general intent of this code to protect the public health, safety, and welfare, which both deviations requested do by providing neighboring properties with additional screening via enhanced native buffers, as well as providing a wall along the northern perimeter to further screen the site from the adjacent estate use. The project team is available for any questions.
On the access easement issue, why is that necessary? It appears to abut the road.
Did you want to cover that?
I can answer that question. Brian Smith, for the record. We don't need an access easement anymore. We went through the required limited review development orders. That's the reason why the time frame has been so long to acquire property to gain access directly to Country Lakes.
Okay, so you do have, the master concept plan is correct that it shows direct access?
Yes, ma'am.
And the water management system, the environmental assessment kept indicating there was some poor drainage, and we've got a condition in here of condition 5 that's a little unusual. Can you just talk briefly about why that's necessary or what the water management system conveyance is doing? There's 2 ditches, I guess, that abut the property. There was significant discussion about that in the record as well.
Basically, again, Brian Smith for the record, what they're referring to is upon looking at the survey and upon looking in the property they acquired, there's an existing drainage easement on the west side of the property that actually serviced the RV park. Those areas would have to be maintained. Also there's an existing drainage ditch along the northern property line that the master concept plan would also not, impact that as well. So whenever they move forward with a development order, full water management system design would have to be done, and that would be both permitted by Lee County as well as South Florida Water Management District.
Okay, so the condition is basically just reiterating what will be accomplished through
Correct.
the Water Management District. And then condition 6, talking about agricultural uses, why is that in here if there are no agricultural uses currently?
Well, right now, there's no agricultural uses, no agricultural exemption. We were worried that we had this in the past, like people, they rezone and they don't want to build, so they ask for ag exemption to use as a agricultural property when the zoning doesn't allow. So we
So
just,
even after it's rezoned to IPD, you're having folks come in and still try to get an agricultural use that's
we have properties that are zoned RPD or CPD, and they had no ag use on it. Today they have ag use and they are requesting tax exemption.
Okay. So you're trying to curb a potential problem.
Correct.
And then
The
you
old,
made
the old
mention-
cattle lease.
You made mention of condition 4D4, I guess.
Yes.
Is that something, you said that the applicant wants to withdraw or remove that that condition?
We would like to modify the language so that the drawings depicting no mechanical equipment near the end of storage buildings would be acceptable, but we would like to strike the language pertaining to doors and windows.
Okay.
And are you going to have openings or they are fake windows?
I'm going to make a note and put a pin in that for a second. Since we've got to leave the record open for the policy analysis, I'm just going to let that condition be something that staff and applicant can work on after the hearing, and then if you can provide me some joint language, or if you can't agree, provide me what the bones of contention are.
If there are openings, we cannot agree. Because code requires solid wall, and we are saying that the part of the deviation is not to have a solid wall and have this wall act as a solid wall. But if they're gonna have windows and doors, then it's no longer a solid wall.
So we would not have any functional windows or doors. Is that more acceptable?
I mean,
So we would-
warehouse buildings, sometimes they have fake windows to make it look like office building. Those are okay, as long as it's not see-through window. It's just that,
Yeah, Brian Smith for the record. That's the clarification we wanted, Madam Hearing Examiner, is where you find these along, certain roadways, et cetera, they do put faux windows on it, and they actually make it look like
No
a nice
opening,
development.
basically.
As long as that's clarified that it's just not a functional opening.
that staff wouldn't have problem with that.
And in terms of the site design, just for 1 second, I wasn't clear. The gate, there's 2 gates, it appears to be, that are shown. There's an entrance gate that someone would have to go to access their personal storage items, but then there's an additional gate farther down. I'm not clear. Can you just kind of walk me on why that's, if you can put up the master concept plan? There's a gate right here. It's showing a fence or a gate as well as the entrance gate.
Oh, yeah, that's a security gate. That's just a security gate.
What is that for, though? Is that for, because there should be no pedestrian or vehicular access coming from
I
that?
can answer that question. Brian Smith for the record again. What we like to do is whenever you have these, you do have a security feature that goes around these sites typically, and it goes a lot of times from wall to wall from a building. A lot of times they'll allow for a pedestrian gate for, honestly, maintenance, mowing, and letting them go back there and making trimming and mowing. So we if that wants to just call it a fence, that's fine. We just need that, we didn't know if we needed it in the master concept plan to make sure that they have the availability to honestly maintain the property.
Okay, so it's a security feature to include?
Yes, ma'am.
Because it says enclosed security buildings or open storage. So is the intention that these are going to be mini warehouse buildings, or is it going to be open storage for vehicles?
I think it's either or. Typically, what you'll find on these, and this is not necessarily the final, but is you'll have the enclosed storage on the outside of periphery, and a lot of times you can have the open storage on the inside. That's where things may not be able to fit in a single story or a 30-foot max height building where you have a boat with a tower on it or something like that. You want to make sure that's interior to the site and give them that option.
Okay, I wanted to be sure, because as you know, the open storage would require additional supplementary
Correct.
setback and shielding. And I just want to be sure we're not needing to address that at this stage, but if you're familiar, okay. That was the extent of my questions. Did staff have anything of the applicant?
No.
Okay, thank you. I'm ready for staff then, whenever you're ready, Sharon.
Want to go to the master concept plan? Good morning, Sharon Badamchian from the county zoning. My resume is on file. I was recognized as expert in zoning and land use issues. I would like to be recognized as such this time. Thank you. Well, a little bit of history. This project started in year 2020, early 2020, as DCI 2020-00005. And we reviewed, at the time it was supposed to be a commercial zoning with mini storage, which is permitted in commercial plan development and industrial plan development. However, they had one or two nuisance strips of land. They were like 5 foot wide land that separated them from the road. And they were trying to get easement through that. And until the last minute, we prepared everything thinking like they're gonna get the easement granted, but they were not successful. So everything stopped until this year. They were able to, I believe, purchase portion of that. And when that happened, our review was complete. But in the meantime, the code land development, the LEAP plan has changed a little bit, specifying exactly where commercials can go in this planning community. And this parcel was not labeled as commercial, but it allowed industrial. So that's why, in a hurry, we changed it from commercial to industrial for the exact same use, same site plan, everything the same. And then after the staff report was completed, we got an email saying that they need 2 deviations from landscaping. The code in this planning district code does not allow deviations for landscaping and sign unless we review it per variance criteria. However, the deviations they are asking is not really changing anything. It's basically the width is staying the same, planting is staying the same, and the wall that is required, we condition that the buildings, they should act as the wall. That's why we said no opening, no windows, no doors, no AC, air conditioning units. So basically, there is no difference between what the original request was and this deviations. As I said earlier, it's not very smart to have a wall, solid wall, and 5 foot from it have another solid wall. And it's not going to serve any purpose. With that said, and the other changes that they asked was for the open space requirements, which are minimal, and it's not really changing anything. And staff crossed out all the other uses they were proposing, just keeping the use that was originally asked for when they wanted to do commercial. And with that, staff recommends approval of this case. It is Personally, I did several of the mini storage buildings in the past, and they turn out to be very quiet neighbors, and no noise, nothing, and they usually maintain a good landscaping, and people don't even notice that there's a warehouse complex next to them. And they make very good neighbors to neighboring residential uses, because the way it is today is urban community, and they could get uses that would be more intrusive and to the residential than having a mini storage buildings. The height is appropriate and setbacks they are providing adequate setbacks and everything. With that, staff recommends approval of this case with those 2 deviations. I know we have to do some additional analysis about those 2 deviations. And regarding changing the condition to allow them to have fake window for windows, as they called it, as long as there's no opening behind it, as long as people from the units, they cannot see outside, and as long as there's no door to walk outside, and as long as there are no AC units to make noise outside, staff has no problem with architectural embellishment to make it look like more or less like office building. This concludes my presentation. Yes.
Did the applicant have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we'll open the public comment period. This is the opportunity, if you have any comments that you would like to make, to come forward and put them on the record. I did not make the instruction at the beginning that if you wish to speak at the board hearing, you have to speak today. And if you speak at the board hearing, the comments that you make at that hearing are limited to whatever comments you make today. So the card that I have, it's for both of you. Did you both want to come forward and speak? I'll let you decide who gets to go first. Okay, if you could just come forward, I'm sorry, so we can capture it for the record. Thank you. And it's Debbie Grover, if I'm Grover? Grover, thank you, good morning.
Good morning. Our property borders the north of this property, and I know that the building's going to serve as part of the wall, but what comes off the building? Is there another wall?
I can answer. Brian Smith, for the record, yes, the wall has to continue the entire length of that buffer. So where there is no building, there will be wall.
There will be wall, and it's going to be 8 foot tall?
It has to be, yes, ma'am.
And has there been a design of the building? Is it going to be a flat roof?
Those are details that are typically done at the development order stage, because when they come in for a development order, they also have to get a building permit. So at this point, we do not have that detail.
Right. Since that property borders our property directly, and you've put that building right on our property, you know, I'm a little concerned about, you know, I know we mentioned that the AC units wouldn't make any noise. Where are they going to be located? On top of the roof?
Well, based on condition number 4 that the staff has provided on this property, is that AC units are not allowed on the rear of these buildings. So they're either going to be on the side or on the top.
Or on the top, okay. And the building's going to be 30 foot tall?
Not necessarily. That is just the height limitation in this zoning.
Okay, all right. And then for the vegetation, all of those trees that border our property are going to come out. And have you decided what kind of vegetation is going to go in there? Is there going to be trees, or are they just going to be up to the height of the wall?
Typically, on your type E landscape buffer that you have on that north side, we have to have 5 trees per 100 linear feet, as well as 30 shrubs per 100 linear feet. Okay. Then the wall, so all of those landscape features will be on the outside. Since we're not in detailed design yet with landscape architecture, I'm assuming that they would stay with the existing palette out there, pine, flatwoods, those kind of features existing, because I believe one of the conditions is we have to have 100% native vegetation required. I think that is one of them. But that's typically how that works.
You know, we're okay with the development of this property, because as I mentioned to you earlier, we're going to ultimately rezone our property, because we have just under 5 acres. And we're going to plan on selling it because there's so much industry that's coming around us. So, you know, it's the use for our property, which was agriculture, and the beauty of it is now basically gone. So that's, for us, the time that we're here, that's why I want to make sure that that wall is in place and that the landscape features, that we don't see that building, you know, that it's an ugly building or, you know, something that's gonna be a detriment to our property if we never rezone it and it gets sold as residential. So that was my question.
Thank you.
And if I'm not mistaken, in the Caloosahatchee Shores, just so you're aware, they do have to go through a community meeting before they submit their development order. Has that been submitted yet?
No, a development order has not been submitted yet.
So when they submit their development order, and I'm not sure, maybe after the hearing, you could let them know where you're gonna publish that notice, just so they can keep an eye out for it. So then you'd have an opportunity, the level of detail of those issues are generally dealt with at the development order stage, but you'll have another opportunity if you go to that meeting to discuss those issues there. Did you wanna speak as well, sir?
No, he doesn't.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll come back to the applicant and the staff. Were there any final comments that you wanted to make for the record? Okay, so I'm going to keep the record open for the 3 items: to get an 11/17 of the master concept plan, to get the analysis on compliance with policy 21.1.2 on the 2 deviation requests, and then revised condition 4D4 language. And again, if you can agree, it sounds like you can, just indicate that. If not, please indicate the alternative language that you both want. How long would you like to keep that open? I know we've got Thanksgiving coming up, so I don't want to give you plenty of time.
Couple of weeks would do.
Okay. So that would generally fall on Friday, November 24th, but that, again, is right after the holiday. So let's do December 1st. If you get it to me sooner, please do. That's not any kind of hard and fast date that I won't look at it before then if it's ready, but at least that gives you some time. So until end of business, December 1st of 2023 for those items. And we'll conclude the hearing for today. And thank you again for coming today. You will receive a copy of the recommendation when it's released, as well as the date for the hearing, before the board when it gets scheduled. Thank you again. Please stay well, stay safe.
Thank you.